Students, good afternoon. I just wanted to extend this video we discussed in class today about the upcoming event. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone that is participating to make this event that is sponsored by the History Department a success. Financial literacy is important, and it is a skill set that you definitely need as we develop young minds to transition into adulthood. I want you to be cognizant of how things work. The power of the black dollar is important, and we need to be aware of how money works and how to avoid the snares and pitfalls economically, especially in today's climate with the conditions that are being produced by the current administration. So again, just to go over a few brief things again, the event starts at 11 a.m. in TT Lane in the conference hall on the third floor, the big hall in TT Lane. If you can get there a little early, it would be appreciated. We want to start on time and conduct ourselves accordingly and have Southern in a great light. As I said, the people are coming to share and impart knowledge with us, taking time from their busy schedule. So let's do what we can to be gracious hosts for this event. So also to reiterate, I will be extending excuses to your professors, those of you that need that. And as I told my other classes, I've upped the ante. Originally, I stated that if you attend, you would receive 100 points. This is still on the table. But as I said, I upped the ante. So if you come in professional attire, ladies dress business, and if the young men dress business as well and wear a tie, you will be receiving 150 bonus points. If you come, you can get 100. If you decide to participate and come in professional attire, you will receive 150 points, which some of you greatly need. So again, the event is at 11 a.m., April the 10th, tomorrow. I will be there around 10:30 getting things set up. My 9:30 class, we are just going to go there. My 12:30 class, you are to just come at the aforementioned time. Other classes are coming and being attending. Judge King, Dr. Hall, have Dr. Comedy has extended the invitation. So I'm expecting a great amount, which is good. So as I said, let's be a gracious host. This video is going to be posted, and I'm looking over the list as I've been going through the announcement section that I had posted on Canvas. I'm not going to read all the names, but I've responded to you with a thank you and see you tomorrow. And I'm looking at the list from my students. I'm just going to do a quick count to see if everyone is not going to call the names, but just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68. Wow. That is a great number. And Those of you that have said you are participating, if we can't show up, let's be adults, as I often say, and let's be responsible and come if you said you're going to come. And it'll be your loss if you decide not to come and miss out on this offer as we are rapidly approaching the close of the semester. So it's going to be on you if you don't come. It will behoove you to come. Okay? So good. So we got that out of the way. And we were lecturing in class today, and I said that I changed some things up since the event is coming. You guys are on spring break next week. So instead of pushing the additional information, we will continue the lecture series Friday, and I will also make an additional video and addendum to this one. So you will have a 24-hour window. Again, next week during the break, the test will be online. I will notify you of the date that will be administered. It will be your responsibility to take the test. As I said, it will be open for a 24-hour period. So that's going to be your job. I say all the time that it is your responsibility to check Moodle, even if it's a day when you're not in my class. You still have another class. And I'm sorry, I'm saying Moodle, I meant Canvas. Even if you're not in my class for that day, you still have to go to Moodle for your other classes. Why not? Just as being responsible and studious, it doesn't hurt you to just go down and look and check the announcements and check your notifications to see if any other assignments are posted. So that's what we should do. So I wanted to make a couple of additional observations as what we are talking, since I find it very relevant and an important chapter. We're talking about the scientific revolution. I've explained to you what that was. I've given you a list of individuals who contributed to developments that enhanced Europe's condition as it relates to knowledge. I didn't say on a global scale. I said in Europe. So we know who lives in Europe, and we know who they are, and we know some of the conditions that they experienced as they walked through this chronological timeline that I've explained to you. The Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the Age of Discovery, the Age of Crisis, the Age of European Power and Expansion, the Afro-Eurasian world economy based on the Indian Ocean. We covered all that information this semester. And I've continually tried to tie those things in. So as we talk about the scientific revolution, and as I said, you can scientific revolution, and you could put a slash or in parentheses, the Enlightenment. The scientific revolution is the overarching phenomenon, and the Enlightenment is a part of that. Certain events occurred in the Enlightenment. I gave you some more relevant and salient concepts that occurred then. But before I go into that, I again want to just say this. It is my assertion as a professor, as a scholar, it is my job, as I said in class, to ask the questions or present information, rather, to mold you or guide you to ask particular questions. That's a skill set that has to be developed. So I kind of guide and orchestrate the conversations and the lectures in somewhat of a Socratic method, meaning I'm asking questions, I'm giving information to prompt you to ask questions. That's the job of an educator, to guide students and guide the conversation and the dissemination of information. So, with that being said, and the scientific revolution, I thought it was relevant that I just give my little 3-minute spiel that I want us to be critical thinkers. And I know we talk about a lot of diverse topics, religion and everything, race, all those subjects that are relevant in today's society. But I want you to learn how to think critically. I want you to learn how to approach information, how to dissect it. We talk about, I gave you some terms, etymology, the origin and original use of terms and how the meaning have changed over time, how that can relate to translation, and that's directly connected to history. Extrapolate, juxtaposition. I gave you those terms to enhance your vocabulary, but to get you to look at it from a historical viewpoint. So I want to pose the question, as I'm always reading and looking at different things and contemplating. So I'm going to say, and I want you to think about this. Is there a difference in a truth and a belief? And are all beliefs true? Because someone believes something, does that make it empirically provable? We talked about empiricism today, and I gave you 3 relevant terms that Francis Bacon talked about. First, I explained speculative reasoning. I explained inductive reasoning, and then I proceeded to explain deductive reasoning and empiricism, which is the same. I told you how those apparatuses work. So is a belief always true? So with that being said, I want to point something else out to you. The scholar Kurlinger came up with the 4 methods of learning. And they are as follows: the method of authority, the method of intuition, the method of tenacity, and the method of science and reason. The method of authority, simply put in layman's terms, the title is self-explanatory, as we can infer that some authoritative figure, your culture, your family, disseminates particular beliefs, and culturally you are taught a thing. I gave the example: if your mother names you June, or your mother says that this red object that's shining in the sky is the sun. When it's night, it's the moon. Agreement comes into place. Everybody else is calling it the sun and the moon. And you would just, that's what it is. Authority teaches you things. That's the method of authority. Typically, authoritative figures are first on, if we look at it from macro or micro levels, smaller to larger, larger to smaller. The family is your first authoritative teacher. School, okay? Your culture, the society that you're a part of, the country that you live in, the government. All these are methods of authoritative dissemination of teaching and obtaining information. Second one is the method of intuition. The method of intuition asserts that you can feel, have an intuition, you can feel a certain way about a thing. You can have an inclination that something may be true. That does not necessarily make it true. It can be called a gut feeling. You can arrive at a solution or a thought by that, your intuition, your gut feeling, or I feel this is the right thing to do. Kurlinger created that position. The third one is the method of tenacity. Tenacity means, we know that tenacious, tenacity, means that one would be resistant to change or refuse to give a thing up. If a dog is tenaciously holding on to a bone and you're trying to pull it away from the dog and he's refusing to let it go, that's another one of the positions that Curlinger said, that as that relates to information, some people tenaciously hold on to a belief even after finding out it's not really true. Well, my grandmother believed it, my mama believed it, everyone believed this. It has to be true. They don't know what they're talking about. And the last one, the method of logic and reason, which is rooted in empirical data, that which can be validated or rejected, that which can be tested and measured or repeated, the collection or observation of data, experimentation, and arriving at a conclusion. I gave that example today. I do that process with lectures, you taking notes, watching the videos, we going on Canvas, I'm doing PowerPoints, okay, you doing the readings, and then I'll do a test. After the test, I will grade the test and come out with results. This is just one similar way that we can say, this is how I can determine your achievements or your outcomes. So the method of science or logic is not based on biasness. As I said when we talked earlier about the speculative reason, I gave an example again, I'll give it to you real quick. I said, hey, we're walking at night. You see a guy standing on a corner, he has on a hood, he has his hands in his pocket. It's nighttime, it's dark, you with your girl, she's holding her purse. You say that he looks shady, we're in an unsavory neighborhood, we might be in harm's way. He may try to rob us or even kill us. Now, you don't know that to be a fact. He may just be cold, he or she, or whoever the person is. But that's the speculative reasoning. You speculating based on a possibility. That's a beautiful analogy. Speculating based on a possibility. Yes, they could possibly be about to put you in harm's way, attempt to rob you or murder you, God forbid. However, you don't actually know that to be true. So those are the different components of that Curlinger pointed out as I'm talking about belief and facts, empirical data, these scientific methods. I want to just quickly point out a couple of more things where we left off earlier today. And it's on page 540 in the textbook on Canvas. And it's a list of individuals. I gave you their contributions to the scientific revolution. We talked about Francis Bacon. We talked about, I'm going to pull a list up real quick, and I don't want to confuse you with the names. I'll just kind of go through it really, really quick with you here as we continue. This is a very informative chapter and it's very important. So let's look at this, guys, really, really quick. The section that says important changes in the scientific revolution. The contributions of the people that brought about change. Okay, so we talked about methods of science. I talked about Sir Francis Bacon. I'm not going to rehash that, but I did tell you speculative, inductive, and deductive reasoning. And deductive reasoning is also known as empiricism. Don't forget that empirical means that which can be proven and validated. Your DNA is empirical. Fingerprints are empirical. An ID couldn't really be empirical. Someone can create a fraudulent ID. Even money can be counterfeited. But your anatomy is empirical. Your gender is empirical. Although some people may think they tenaciously feel that they are a man or a woman, their anatomy empirically says that you are a male or a female, regardless to what your orientation is. I'm giving an example of empirical. So let's move on. We talked about Francis Bacon. So the list quickly, it's on page 540 in the ebook. Nicholas Copernicus, Andreas Bacillus, who I talked about, the guy who did the autopsies on criminal bodies to look at ways to determine outcomes based on organs and possible causes of death or what type of life the person lived, and see the inner workings of the body. We know about Tycho Brahe. We know about Galileo, and I said he created the first telescope in the year 1609, and he discovered that the moon has craters in a geography just like the Earth. He discovered that Jupiter has 4 moons. He named one of the moons Europa. That's where the word Europe comes from. But the etymology of that word is there was actually a Phoenician dark-skinned god named Europa. So Europe is named after a Phoenician god who were people of color. Additionally, Johann Kepler, we talked about him. I gave you William Harvey, who looked at blood circulation, arteries, and veins, and what that looks like. And we talked about René Descartes from France, who discussed dualism. I said in class today, dualism is a concept that the human being is mind and body, or the human being is physical and spiritual. Either one of those are interchangeable. There's another component or a theory outside of René Descartes that the man is triune, mind, body, and soul, or mind, body, and spirit. There are some individuals that may say a soul and a spirit are different. If we again, that's another way we can delve into the definition of the word and the etymology of it, and how was it originally used, in whatever language those words were first used. We can look at the etymology of it. Okay? Soul and spirit. Some of you may assert that a soul and a spirit is the same thing, but they're actually 2 different things, and we'll talk about that at a later date. So that's on 540, the list. Please master that and look at that. That's very important. Also with René Descartes, he talked about the quality of motion and that everything is in a perpetual state. It's always moving. In the universe, in your body, everything is in a state of motion. And he talked about, vacuums in space-time. We're not going to go down the scientific path of it. I just want you to be cognizant of the information. So that was great. The book says also that Descartes' greatest achievement was the development of his initial vision into a whole philosophy of science. That's important. Also, I don't want you to forget Francisco Hernandez. You took the notes. Everybody seemed to be getting it today. I was impressed. Francisco Hernandez, who for King Philip represented Spain and was a major developer in botany, the study of plants, plant life. Hernandez discovered in a 7-year period, he authored 15 volumes of information on over 3,000 plants and their medicinal purposes that did not exist in Europe. that Europeans had never even seen before that had healing power. That was paramount. Just based on the fact that Europe had been through a series of plagues and disease, the Black Plague, the bubonic plague, poor hygiene. We did an assignment on hygiene in Europe. The improper disposal of waste, the improper burial, not burying bodies deep enough, not hygiene, drinking of dirty water, that's dysentery, sleeping in close proximity to animals, the eating of improper cooked kept meat, eating of uncooked proper meat, raw meat. All these things contribute to disease. Okay? So that's important. But let's move on. And we talked about Jalen. You should have that in his position, as he explained, the four humors, which are the fluids in the body that he asserted brought about illness. So in the scientific revolution, in the Enlightenment, you had natural philosophy, which I said is the original term for science. Natural philosophy, science, they're interchangeable. You have multiple branches. It began to branch off. Science, botany, zoology, the creation of species and genuses and phylums and mammals and reptiles and amphibians and fowls and birds and sea life. All these things begin to develop in this time. And that's very important, and that's a very salient point for you to grasp. In addition to that, we talked about Pericles. I'm not going to go into him with a lot. He was dealing with the chemical components instead of humoral imbalances. He believed that imbalances came from other components. Robert Boyle, I talked about him. He's considered to be the father of chemistry in Europe. He operated with gases and whatnot. And I gave the example, and David, I think it was David, and one of them said, I said, what is a gas that can be used positively? And the student replied, anesthesia. And I said, you're correct. Anesthesia is used to put people, render them unconscious, to conduct a procedure on them. When I had my incident and I broke my back and I was paralyzed from the waist down. As I said in class, I have titanium rods on my spine and 10 screws, 2 rods and 10 screws that are on my back for life. They had to give me anesthesia for that. Okay, let's move on. And let me get to this other part that I want to touch. And this is where I'm going to wrap up because this is important. Just want to touch into this. As we talked earlier, as I began my little talk about belief and a truth, about the methods in which people acquire knowledge, about inductive, deductive, and speculative reasoning, empiricism, scientific inquiry, scientific method. As I gave the example that in science, in history, social science, the study of cultures, peoples, and societies, the human condition, even in a court of law, in government, medicine, the doctor doesn't just say, oh, you look sick. He has to do or give a diagnosis. And the diagnosis can only occur after he checks you out. He checks your blood pressure, you check your heart rate, coughing, he checks your breathing. Okay, everything is checking out. He doesn't just say you look sick or you look like you lost weight. Those are speculations. And that very well may be true. But the more precise way is to conduct and make observations, collect data, run some form of analysis, and then create a conclusion based on those analyses. Okay? So let's look at it. The section that brings us to the Enlightenment, and we're going to really get deeper into this. It says that the relationship between science and reason and religion historically has been fundamentally hostile. The pursuit of knowledge based on reason and proof, according to the text, is incompatible with faith. Let me repeat that. The text said that the pursuit of knowledge based on reason and proof is incompatible with faith. Those of you that subscribe to the Bible say that faith is the substance of things hoped for and those that are not seen, if I'm not mistaken. Some scholars have said that faith is belief without evidence. Those are basically parallel examples. But the text says that yet during the scientific revolution, most of these people that made contributions were vehemently religious. And yet they saw their contributions as celebrating God's glory, bringing rationale. And I said that also, if I'm not mistaken, not Francis Bacon, his name is escaping me, it'll come back to me, but the individual that I said saw the relationship between geometry and algebra. I just can't think of his name at the moment. And he developed an hypothesis saying that the display of God as it relates to science is mathematical. Mathematics ties into all levels of science, physics, et cetera, et cetera. And it was his assertion of thinking that mathematics is precise. 1 + 1 is 2 anywhere in the world, any place, all day, unless you believe in something else. But 1 + 1 is 2. That's an actual fact. That's provable. It's empirical. And if God is the author of truth, then there should be no guesswork about it. You shouldn't have to wonder. It shouldn't be a mystery, according to the particular person whose name I still can't think of. I'm going to have to pull him up. So this is what was developing. So during this time period, people displaced the earth as the center of the universe, and they understood the place of mankind in the creation, saying that it started with Genesis. In the beginning. In the beginning of what? In the beginning of where? In the beginning of when? Remember when I said that conjecture is incomplete information in class? So we get it in the beginning. In the beginning where? In the beginning of what? What are these things that we're saying? Man began to hold fast truth to the Genesis process. And if you look at, that's for another lecture, but if we look at that historically and empirically, that's about 6,000 years of history, when we know that the earth is 4.5 billion years old. So 6,000 years is not in the beginning. And you need to know that. So let's move on. All religions, the big three, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, all somewhat subscribe to the Old Testament. And looking at, they were arguing back and forth about the Aristotelian model, which said that the earth was the center of the universe, the earth was motionless, that everything rotated around the earth, even the sun, and that beyond the 9 planets in this solar system is where the throne of God was, and that the angels were responsible for making the planets rotate. The Copernican model came back and said, no, we refute that the earth is not the center of the universe, but yet the sun is the center of the universe, and that the sun is motionless and the planets rotate around the sun based on gravitational pull, and their orbits are elliptical based on a oval type shape. And the faster it gets to the sun, the closer it gets to the sun, the faster the rotation is, the farther away, the slower it is. The slower it is. And those distances, their location or distance from the sun, states how long that time period stays. As I said in class, Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It takes Mercury 88 Earth days to make a full circumference around. Earth, the third planet, takes 364.5 days. It's not actually 365. It's kind of off. But that's what it is. It's different than the farther away in that elliptical orbit. So, again, we know the history of the Catholic Church being the universal church, being the first branch of Christianity. I've given you the history and a backdrop on what that did, the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic Reformation. We've discussed all that, and we will have to get more into detail. But again, the church during this time period is the point that I want to make. In the scientific revolution, as we enter into the Enlightenment, the church forbade, it was forbidden for any information that conflicted with a biblical contention was considered heresy. So as they were determining and learning all these things, as I said at the beginning of the chapter, the scientific revolution is when man began to learn and crave and desire understanding of the universe and how it operated and his natural phenomena. What causes earthquakes, hail, rain, sleet, snow, thunderstorms, hurricanes, tsunamis, volcanoes? What makes these happen and why? What makes people sick? Are they possessed with demons or do they have epilepsy? Does the person have an allergic reaction or is he a leper because he broke out? So these are things that the church was saying, you are a heretic, meaning you are against the theology of the church. This was a major comment, and we'll go into detail about this. Copernicus was considered a heretic. Kepler was considered a heretic, and the Catholic Church in the year 1616 came out with an official list of no-read books. They were censoring the knowledge like a communist or dictator state with propaganda. They were prohibiting things to be read. In the year 1616, you need to know that the Catholic Church during the scientific revolution, during the Enlightenment, came out with a do not read list. And most of these people that we've been discussing are on that list. That's important to know. Why are these people on a do not read list? Okay? 1616. Even Galileo was sentenced by Pope Urban VIII for his telescope that he created. Looking into the celestial beings and seeing the orbits, I said Galileo created a telescope with a 20 times magnification. The church was like, wait a minute, hold on, no, in the beginning. So as they begin to create and come about with empirical data, speculative, inductive, deductive, empiricism, the church began to lose legs to stand on. The church could not combat the proof that was being given, so they labeled you a heretic. They labeled these people on the do not read list. Oddly enough, in the year 1633, Galileo was tried for heresy by the Pope, the astronomer Galileo. was imprisoned and tortured over and over until he recanted. They tortured Galileo in the year 1633 until Galileo said, wait, man, look, I give up. I haven't seen the moon. Jupiter don't have 4 moons. None of that. I said I saw. Hell, I made it up. They imprisoned him. They tortured him. They labeled him a heretic. They labeled him a heretic. The Catholic Church did that. We'll go deeper into that. The Catholic Church became more and more hostile towards silence, a change that helped account for the decline of science within Catholic communities. So I just wanted to introduce that. We're going to go into deeper detail. This video is getting lengthy, and I didn't really want it to go too long, over 30 minutes. I overstayed, overdone my issues, but I'm going to point 2 things and then I'll stop. I introduced the Catholic Church, Galileo being tortured, the 1616 do not read list, Kepler, and these people were placed on the book and labeled as heretics. So, the scientific revolution, according to the text, contributed to a series of debates all throughout Europe that became known as the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment shattered Christendom, and the conflicts of the Reformation brought about old religious questions. Okay? Divine right of kings, absolutism, the great chain of being, all these things began to be questioned and challenged, etc., etc. So this is where we will go deeper into. In closing, the scientific revolution inspired intellectuals to believe that true answers to all questions can be found through the use of critical thinking. This is what I started off my lecture with, my conversation with you about. True answers to all questions can be found through rational use and critical thinking. In a characteristically optimistic spirit, see that word spirit? When I said spirit and soul, they're saying optimistic spirit. If we look at the etymology of that spirit, how is that being used and in what context? An optimistic spirit. Some people might say that's a demonic spirit. What does that mean? So people have spirits, or do they have souls, or do they have both? We'll talk about that. Okay, look. The Enlightenment embraced the belief that fundamental progress was possible in human society with science and logic and reason. Man has not been remaining stagnant over time. Man has consistently evolved. The law is the change. Change is the law of life. Every day, change occurs. Some people may choose to remain stagnant, but every day you learn, even if you don't want to. I tell my students all the time, always investigate the information you receive. If it is indeed the truth, it should stand the test of investigation. Always ask why. I love to quote beloved historian Dr. John Henry Clark, who says, I only debate my equals. Others I teach. Did you hear that? I only debate my equals. Others I teach. That doesn't mean I know everything. I can be taught. I'm not going to get into a debate with someone who I obviously see that you are not equipped to go down the path of a logical debate based on inductive, deductive, and empiricism. I've gave numerous examples. It's not a strong enough argument to debate with a scholar, a social scientist, and just say the Bible says. I'm afraid that's not a strong enough argument to go up against a historian. Okay? So in closing, we're going to stop there. And we're going to go into the early Enlightenment. We're going to look at some of the challenges that happened and how the Enlightenment took hold. We're going to look at how individuals began to, even kings and these monarchs began to have a concept called an enlightened monarchy, meaning that they were moving away from the old ways and gravitating toward logic and reason. Hey, look, let's have a great day tomorrow for our event at Southern University. Let's do great things. Let's be a gracious host. Please come out again, 11 o'clock, T.T. Lane Hall, in the third floor in the big conference hall. Professional dress, you will be compensated. If you come, you will be compensated. Life is a series of choices. Every choice has an outcome, good or bad, based on your options. I just gave you options. Okay, class? One love, peace. I will see you tomorrow.